Coming up on Profiles in Caring, presented by Equitable Life and Casualty, we'll take you behind the scenes of this show and meet the people who make it happen. Do stay with us.
The following Profiles in Caring is made possible through generous support from Equitable Life and Casualty, committed to caring.
Hi, and welcome to a very special Profiles in Caring. I'm your guest host, Tony Toscano, and the reason I'm guest hosting is because tonight we're going to meet the players behind Profiles in Caring. And I want to introduce everybody to you so you know who the players are. First of all, the captain of the team, Kimberly Perkins. Kimberly, hi.
A dubious distinction. Thanks very much, Tony.
And would you introduce your fantastic crew?
Absolutely. My number one person, my number one sidekick, videographer, photographer, editor, number one go-to person, Lynn Peterson. Next to him, our correspondent, Doug Jardine, also photographer and editor. And at the end, Shauna Scott, who is, again, a videographer and a reporter and an editor and a behind-the-scenes administrative assistant. As you can tell, Tony, we're all kind of jacks of all trade here. You wear many hats at Profiles in Caring.
Now, Profiles in Caring is celebrating how many years on television?
Well, as a concept, we've done this for 6 years, but we've had a half-an-hour television show for 4 years. Before that, we were doing small news segments on an ABC station in Utah, and that grew into the entity we now call Profiles in Caring.
Now, in an age where we seem to be celebrating the bad things that happen, especially with you know, the media and television.
Sure.
Did you meet a lot of obstacles in creating and coming up with the show?
Not really obstacles, but it was really born of wanting to do something that had good news. The genesis of this was back in January of 2002. We were just a couple of months post 9/11. The country was in trauma. Personally, we were all dealing with such sadness, and I took a humanitarian trip to Ghana in that month and realized that there is still really good news in the world, people doing really good stuff, and in the face of terror and war and economic downturn and everything that can be so depressing on nightly news, that it just seemed sensible to remind people that there really are wonderful human beings out there trying to make a difference, and they might be doing it on one-off projects, really small, under-the-radar projects, and that's where we decided, gee, we need to bring the spotlight on more of this good news and not so much of this really horrific stuff.
Tell me a little bit about how you convinced someone like Lynn Peterson to join the team.
Actually, he found me. We were, again, back in Salt Lake City at the television station that I anchored at for many years, had retired from, went back as kind of a guest correspondent, a little bit like Tom Brokaw's doing now with NBC, and was going through videotape, and Lynn Peterson, who was there, came by and said, you know, Kimberly, I think you can expand these stories. You're thinking too small. And I'll let him pick up the story from there, because that's when he said, let me have a shot at it.
Well, I remember the day distinctly. I was on one editing machine doing Elizabeth Smart stuff. It was 6 months after she had been kidnapped, still no sign, and I was sending stuff out to the national news agencies. Kimberly walks in with a box full of tapes marked Ethiopia, and she said, can you dub these over to VHS for me so she could go home and write them? So I'm cutting Elizabeth Smart here, and I kept looking over, and I kept seeing not what I thought Ethiopia was. I thought Ethiopia would be a whole bunch of very skinny kids with fat bellies, you know, flies all over their faces. Instead, I was seeing all these very, very happy girls getting an education, happier than I've ever seen any American girls ever. And something, I mean, it was just the juxtaposition. Here I had the worst happening, a girl kidnapped from her house with Elizabeth Smart, and I have these girls who have received the best gift ever, and it moved me. And I had seen the Profiles of Caring, is what they were called on the news at that time, and they were nice, but they were sandwiched between weather and sports. They were kind of like an afterthought. Many times they got bumped because of Elizabeth Smart or whatnot, and I went to Kimberly and I said, you know, you're doing a great service for these nonprofits and these stories that you're telling. It's unfortunate that they have to be sandwiched in the news at this time. And quite frankly, I said, you're missing the boat. And I thought I offended her. And,
no, not at all.
And she called me and said, I need you to tell...
Are you kidding? I like what you're saying.
You know, she called me and said, I need you to tell my husband what you told me. I had no idea her husband had a nonprofit at the time, and I'll actually let you continue it from that point.
Well, it just, again, I sometimes think, Tony, these things are meant to be a little thinking cosmically. And when Lynn said, let's do more with this, and let's go to the foundation and see if they'd be willing to sponsor the effort. And that's when my husband said, you know, let's take a little bit of our foundation money. None of it for me. I'm all nonprofit, but you know, Lynn can't work for nothing. And so he came on board with the foundation to expand the idea of Profiles in Caring, and from doing small news segments, that's when it grew to being a half-an-hour show.
I want you to hold that thought. We are going to be back right after the break with some more of your team and some great stories about trials and tribulations of creating and doing a TV show. Stay tuned.